I'm painting at a little bit of an angle so that the gravity comes down and my bead of wetness is at the bottom, and that way I can just work my way right down.
Man, I've got something exciting for you. Another brilliant painter, a master, Michael Holter. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thank you, Eric. It's fun to be here, and thank you for the kind words.
It's fun to be anywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Virtually or not, whatever.
As things heat up in the world, and they are heating up, it's really nice to be able to focus on art and keep our heads in the game and just forget about everything else. Don't you agree?
Yes, it is. It's a good thing, and a lot of people are having a lot of enjoyment from this this thing that we love to do and love to talk about, and so it's really great. And I appreciate all that you're doing to advance the art world with all the things you're doing. It's great.
Thank you. We're all in it together, man. We're just trying to keep our family together and keep everybody's heads in the right place. So what are you going to do today?
I'm going to do just a small painting that is a waterfront kind of scene, and the object of it is really going to be, if you're a plein air painter or if you are just painting indoors, whatever it is. One of the things that's always good to be able to do is to find subjects that you can get done rapidly and not labor over. Sometimes you don't have the time, or sometimes you just have a subject that just needs to be treated in a certain way. And so I'm going to do excuse me, concentrate on kind of a backlit thing. So it'll be a little bit less time consuming than something where there's a lot of light and shadow, and you can do that with a lot of different kinds of subjects and create some pretty interesting dramatic results. So that's basically what I'm going to do today.
Well, that sounds like fun. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm going to drop you off for a second, and then we will continue in just a minute.
All right.
What's the plan? We had a really terrific week right before Realism Live started. I just got back the day before. It was in New Hampshire Fall Color Week. A lot of the color had kind of left us, but we still had a great time and a lot of wonderful stuff. If you're not familiar with us, we're a publisher that does Plein Air Magazine. Plein Air Magazine, in case you don't know, is the #1 selling art magazine in America at Barnes & Noble stores, the biggest distributor in America. And so we're pretty excited about that. And we're now very excited about being in 278 Michaels stores. That's a big thing for us. If you want to know more about what we do, we have a Everything We Do page, which is at streamlinepublishing.com/everything. streamlinepublishing.com/everything. And there's things in there that you never have imagined that could be like, it's like Disneyland for artists. What can I tell you? I probably shouldn't use that word. I'll probably get sued. I don't want to do that. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of what I've got going on today. Okay, so I think I've got all my announcements out of the way. It's getting easy. I like easy. And let me just double check to make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay, no, I haven't missed a thing other than back to Michael Holter.
Here I am.
Here I am. So, Michael, I guess I should probably show a little bit of your work.
Oh.
All right. I just happen to have some things that we pulled in. First off, let's see here. You're going to be part of Watercolor Live. That's pretty exciting. And so there's your icon for that. But I'm going to show you a couple of images that Michael has done in watercolor. Fabulous pieces.
That's oil.
Is that you?
That's an oil. Yeah.
I didn't know you did oil.
Yeah, I've got some oils that I do. I used to paint more in oil, and then watercolor's kind of gotten the best of me lately. So.
Yeah, well, I knew that wasn't watercolor the minute I saw it. I thought, how could that be? Fabulous work. Fabulous. Wow. Well, it just keeps coming. The fall color in New Hampshire, this reminds me, it was just so stunningly beautiful. Oh, I like that. And what I like about this painting is the simplicity of it. Really beautiful. Okay, so I should mention that Michael has a couple of videos with us. This one's called Seven Steps to Watercolor Landscapes. And there's a couple different demos in that. And then the other one is 7 Steps to Watercolor Portraits. Everything's about 7 steps. So those are available at Creative Catalyst Productions or lilitollartvideo.com. So, Michael, let's get into your lessons.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to, hopefully this will all flow nicely. I'm going to show you a couple things here on my, my screen, and it should feed over there nicely. What I'm going to do today is work on a backlit subject. Now, the one on the left, this boat scene on the left there, is the kind of sky I want to work with, the colors I want to work with. I want that. This was a early morning in the Rockport, Texas area on the Gulf Coast. Beautiful day. It was a plein air event. We were out there, a bunch of people painting, and it was great fun to paint. But the sun, you know, that light changes pretty rapidly. The one on the right was a photo taken in Florida on the Gulf Coast again, but that was more like a noontime shot. So the sun is high, but you can see that it is somewhat still a silhouetted form. So I've got these shapes. I'm going to use the one on the right for the boats, for the main structure, but I'm going to use the color scheme from the one on the left because I think it has a little more drama and it should be a little more interesting to do. So this is my painting area. I guess you can see that okay, Eric, right?
Absolutely.
And you're there, right? You're not sleeping or anything now.
Well, I am sleeping. I actually was going to use this opportunity to take a nap, but now you've blown my cover.
Okay, go to sleep. Now this is a fun, simple subject in many ways. People look at this. Water frustrates some painters, and a complex series of objects like this could be complicated. But I'm going to make it simple. I don't have a lot of time, so we're going to get right into it. It's going to be a wet into wet treatment here, and I'm going to just start by wetting down the paper and creating an area where I can drop some color in. Now, I probably will try to leave a few little white areas in this area of these the boats and the dock and some of this in here. Probably, if it works, I will. Sometimes you just lose them, and then that's okay. You have to come back and do something different. And I'm not opposed to using opaques. In watercolor, there's sort of a school of thought that you never use white. You only use the white of the paper. And I feel that's kind of old school in many ways. Even some of the greats, and when John Singer Sargent was doing watercolor at the end of his career, he painted some of his paintings. You can see the cracking of the white gouache in the surface. So he was, who can argue with John Singer Sargent? And if he was willing to use some opaques and some whites and things like that, then I think I can too. So I'm going to start off by putting in some of that color that I showed you in that one photo. And into doing that, I'm going to start with some fairly bright yellow. This is my brightest. It's a cad yellow light hue. And I want to put some of that just right across this middle. I'm going to go a little warmer. This is a gamboge. I'm going to put some of that in here, kind of let that kind of, and I'm going to switch to maybe even a little orange. Go a little orangier. So these colors reflect and should give me some good base for my painting as I get going in it. Now I'm going to take a little cerulean blue and put some color up into the sky and tone it down as I get into this area of the of these warm tones that I have. Bleed it right into it and let it kind of blend right in. I don't want to have too much separation from those areas. Now on the bottom portion, I need to repeat the same thing. This is just a repeating pattern in this water. There are some ripples in the water, so there's some differences in how the reflection happens. But nevertheless, it's similar. I'm going to add a little bit of this orange into mine. It just kind of tones back that blue. It's a complement, really, of blue. So, and when I get down lower to the bottom of the page, there's going to be, I have to go a little bit darker to pull that forward. Now, on the photograph, it looks pretty light at the bottom, but typically, you're going to want to go a little bit deeper to kind of drag your eye forward. Now, there's several things about perspective that help you think about perspective. It's not always linear perspective and lines. It also has to do with the use of such things as aerial perspective, distance, and then, of course, the values. I'm going to put a little violet down in here, kind of darken that a little bit, and maybe even put a little burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is kind of a complement of the of these blues that I have in there, so it'll tone it back a little bit. So I have another angle here. You can see how wet that is when I switch to that angle. Pretty wet and pretty saturated. But I have a couple things more to do, and then I'm going to ask Eric a little later here to kill some time while I dry it, because I'm going to need to go in and.
You're going to make me work. You're going to make me work.
I'm going to make you wake up. Yeah, after that, then you can take a nap. So I need to look at the amount of moisture I've got on the paper right now in terms of what I do next. There's a point where with watercolor you have to kind of really get used to the differences in how much moisture is there. So when you wet the paper down like this, you're putting water down, and then you're putting pigment with water in it, and so all of it is pretty saturated, and you have to really be careful. If I put something in there at this point, I might really lose the control of it. So I have to wait just a little bit. So I'm talking. One of the things about watercolor, again, is that the atmosphere has a lot to do with what your results are going to be. If it's a real humid day, it takes longer to dry, and so you can have it's a tendency to be more messy with your painting. Things can get sloppy. And if it's real dry, they dry so fast you can't do anything that's real juicy. I painted in China last year, and we were in this very dry part of China, and it was really difficult. I had a tough time. Then we moved down to the coast in Qingdao, and it was much easier to paint there. When you get to an area like that, and then sometimes, doing plein air like that, and then doing plein air, I've done it in places where I've had to go into my car and dry my paper, with the heater, turn the heater on and the defroster blowing, and try to get the water out of it. So this brush here I'm going to use is a long Neef Taklon fibered rigger. It's really a rigger, but it's real long, and I'm going to use it in a kind of a unique way. I'm going to make the clouds with that. So I'm going to use some ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, my usual mix. I make a stew, I call it, and I kind of create a stew that I work from. So I have this sort of blue-gray. I'm going to add some alizarin crimson to make it a little more violet. A little more blue. I'm sort of, concocting this color that I like here. Now, one of the things I'm going to try to do is take a look and see what that color is. To me, it's a little dull. It needs to be a little more red in it. Let's put a little. There we go. I could use some straight violet, but. And then when I do this, I like to also, because I've got these bright colors, I like to pick up a little bit of this stuff in my palette over here. This little bit of orange. Put a little of that on the side of my brush, and I just spray this thing out as much as I can here and see what I can come up with. Now, where do these clouds belong? I'm thinking that they need to go be a little bit bigger here and go that direction. So let's just start here and see what we end up with. So here's where my larger clouds are going to hang. And see, it's already drying a little bit up there. I have a misting bottle, spray bottle, that helps a little bit with this kind of thing. So here are some wispy clouds drifting in off the Gulf. And because the sun is behind over here, you don't have to get too detailed and worry about the shapes, trying to create this three-dimensional shape for these clouds, because they're the kind of clouds, because they're backlit like that, you really don't have to do that much. You're just indicating some shapes and letting it happen. So when you do watercolor like this, it's a lot of it's about knowing the paper and the watercolor, the way it works. This
and appropriately, there are questions about the kind of paper you're using, and the kind of paint you're using, and the kind of brush you're using.
All right, good questions. The paper I'm using right now is an Arches 140-pound rough. You may not be able to see the texture. It's a little more textured than the Arches regular. It's kind of my main go-to paper. The paints are a variety. I have a lot of Daniel Smith paints, some M. Graham paints. I have a Winsor & Newton. My burnt sienna is my Winsor & Newton. I have some Holbein. I have a lot of Holbein up here that are opaque colors. So I use those in various places in various ways. So that's, kind of a mixture. This particular brush is a like I mentioned a little earlier, it's from Australia. It's a Neef long rigger, and you could use any kind of brush. You just have to have a brush that you can do that, kind of make it spread out. You could use anything, a hake brush or anything. A lot of times, one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm teaching watercolor is that it isn't so much which brush. The biggest thing is the paper. If you have good paper and you get used to a certain paper or get used to the way these papers work, that's the biggest thing. It could be any kind of paint, any kind of quality paint will still work, and any kind of brush. Brushes and tools like this are just there for making marks. I mean, they're mark-making tools. You can use your fingers, you can use you can use a paper towel, you can use anything in watercolor, especially. It's just about making those marks that work for you. Now, if this was a little bit more wet, I would go down in here and make some larger bands of color. I won't do that now. I'm going to dry this thing, and I'll try to get that in there later at a later point and see if we can make it work. So let me, Eric, this is where I'm going to mute my mic for about a minute while I dry this.
You mean we don't get to listen to the hair dryer?
If you want.
No, we don't want to listen to a hair dryer.
All right, I'm off.
Well, I think this is fascinating, and it's nice to see a hair dryer that doesn't actually make any noise for a change. I was when he was doing the clouds, I was like, those don't look like clouds to me. But once they started running in the water, they really did, and really terrific. I think that every painter tends to find colors that they like, and the nice thing about colors is you experiment from every manufacturer. And I just went through this. Matter of fact, I could show it to you. Well, I don't have it handy, but I did a color chart recently. I was trying to work on skin tones, and I started trying some different base foundational colors. One was a burnt umber, of all things, and I tried 3 or 4 different burnt umbers, and then I lightened them and with white and so on, and then I added different colors to them. And though I ended up picking one burnt umber over all the others, because some were a little bit too red, some were a little too gray, and so you're always looking for the right color that is a fit for you. And that's why Michael is saying that he had a raw sienna or a burnt sienna from one manufacturer, but every manufacturer has superstar colors, you know, that some of those manufacturers, like everybody uses, and then some of them not. Are you back?
I am back. Yes.
How did I do fill in time?
You did. I mean, it sounded like you ended just when I ended. So
I did, and you could. It's all those years of radio training, and you did perfectly. You ended right on time. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to you now.
All right. So now that it's dry, you know, you can tell. Usually, you can tell if it's a little cool. It may still be a little damp. There may be a little bit of dampness left, but it's okay. I don't want to keep going. The biggest thing, again, for watercolor artists, beginners, and my students, a lot of times is not letting your layers dry. Let them dry good, or dry them with a dryer. The dryer can be a killer. It can smush your colors down. That's a technical term, by the way, smush. And so you want to do it, you know, when they've settled in a little bit, not do it to, you know, too much, not do it too early when it's really wet, because you want to let those colors find their own little place within the texture of the paper. I have a horizontal horizon line that I've drawn here, and I have a vertical line I've drawn here, which you may not be able to see, but I just did that because I wouldn't usually draw all that. But I'm going to put some masks up behind over here and bring down some. I'm making a cruciform design out of this, a horizontal here and a vertical here, to kind of bring your eye into this portion of the painting, and then have most of my strong darks and lights in here. So I'm going to go in now and quickly do a middle value in through this with a little variety. And but I think before I do that, I'm going to do a little bit of, I think I'm just going to spritz this bottom here and put a little moisture on here. And I'm going to put a little bit of, see if that works. See if that's enough moisture. I want to darken this a little bit down in the bottom with some bands. You can see a little bit on the thing I did before. There's some undulation looking bands here. That's typically what happens in water. I just want to see if I can enhance that at all with a little more color down on the bottom. And now I should have done that while it was wet, you know, so this is probably going to be less than perfect. But I want to do this before I come down into the rest of the painting. I think we'll be okay with that. It's not perfect. One thing about wet into wet, you don't have much control, but you have these wonderful gradations, and watercolor, you know, and the principles of design, gradation is one of those principles, and one of the most simplest things about watercolor are the gradations. It's the one thing that watercolor has going for it that. I mean, I love oils too, but you just can't get the same kind of gradations in oils. Well, I shouldn't say you can't. You have to work at it. You couldn't do it as quickly as I just did all this. Okay, I'm going to take some of this stew that I have right here. It's mostly blue and it's very light. And I'm just going to start over here and put this is like a tree line, horizon line in the back. It was actually an island out in the Gulf of Mexico. And then I'm going to darken up this a little bit, because on the photo, everything is pretty dark, very dark, middle value dark. And it's just going to get, I'm just going to get colors. I'm going to drop in colors. I'm going to change colors as I go. But I need a nice pile of color here to work with. And I'll just start with that. And I just need to make and I'm going to do it rather quickly so I don't bore you all. And I don't have a lot of time. Eric is tight with his time right now. I don't know what the deal is.
Well, I'm always tight with my time, because what happens is that some of the platforms, YouTube, Instagram, etc., will cut us off at exactly 1 hour.
Oh, wow.
So it's, and you know, if you can't do a painting in an hour, I mean, what good are you anyway, right?
Absolutely. An hour is really good amount of time. And watercolor, you know, one of the beauties of watercolor is that it is one of those that you can really do quickly if you have a plan. One of my steps in my 7 steps, since you brought that up earlier, is the plan stage. You've got to have a plan for your painting. You can't just go willy-nilly into it and try to hit something that's going to really work if you haven't really thought it through. And I have a friend who's a portrait painter, and he was very kind and complimentary about watercolor. He said watercolor is the ultimate performance art. And I think there's some truth in that. There's something about the watercolor, the way it can be applied, and the speed with which you can get it accomplished, that is very unique to painting, I'd say. So here are these columns, and I don't want to spend too much time making them perfect, but I have them drawn in, so I can just knock them in. There's stuff back here. The British watercolorist Robert Wade has been quoted, and I love this quote. He says, "If you see a jumble," with a British accent, of course, "if you see a jumble, paint a jumble." And that is something that I think everyone should think about. When you see something, paint that. Don't worry about whether it's what is this thing that I'm working on. And I'm being a little more sort of abstract with some of this, just trying to create this shape. Then I might. Now there's a little boat over here that I haven't done yet, but I'll probably have to come back to him. Watercolor I'm painting at a little bit of an angle so that the gravity comes down and my bead of wetness is at the bottom, and that way I can just work my way right down. Now over here, this is where there are parts of this are open, because they're windows into these boats here and into these cabins of these boats. And I may not get this all precisely drawn in terms of the shapes here. I just need to. It doesn't really matter.
One brush the whole time.
In this one right now, yeah. I don't want to switch right now. I've got to keep this thing moving. So if and I could go in here with a flat brush or a different brush and do something. I'm going to shift the color a little bit, add some red into this. So my stew then becomes another color. That's not a window there.
You're making me hungry. I'm going to need some stew for lunch.
Absolutely. It is, and what this is one of my workshop thingies. If stew is a little too, to warm it up, you just add a little red, a little peppers or something like that, and to cool it down, you add a little green, some collards or something. I don't know. Now this part down in here, I want to make sure I get to it before it's still damp. There's a portion right in here that is going to be. Let me do this other boat. Let me just shift the color a little bit to use some of the cerulean and stuff I have here and do this little boat over here. Just need to get something over here. This. And I'm just going to add some water to it, have it gradate down a little bit, and I'm going to use this wet right in here to create this shape that is the way water makes this undulating passage when the waves come through. And then this portion becomes also It's all pretty wet in here. There's most of this goes right into the same value, the same color. Well, the color reflecting off the water changes some, some because there's, water has its own characteristic, and the more shallow the water is, the more you see what's below, of course, and that can have an effect on how this all works. But now there's quite a bit of reflection off the back of this boat, so I just want to leave a lot of that, and then I'll start leaving some little ripples here and there. And so what I'm trying to do here is, as quickly as I can, create this shape. And there's a piling that's creating a shape down here. Another one over here. So those are the, and you don't have to be, real particular about them. You can, this is an abstraction anyway. Okay, so that I like to work in pieces like this. So that one chunk is basically one big passage of color. I'm going to bring it over into this over here now. So here's there's a boat right here, the front of a boat, and that goes there. And there's another, I see there's a piling over here that should come up in here. I didn't draw in, but I like the shape of that, so let's put that in. And here's the, I'm going to save the back of that boat for a second. Let's go to some turquoise. I like this cobalt teal a lot, and this color is, there's a color not quite like that. It's a little more cobalt right in here. But I'm going to throw in a little more colorful note here. It's a lid, I think, of a cargo hold or something. I think it's a fishing boat, and they open them up, and they have it's where they keep their catch or whatever. So let's just use that same color on the top of this boat right here, and let that be part of the signature of that boat. Now this one then becomes a little less detailed. This one over here has a little more detail with it because it is closer. It's also a part of the boat or part of the painting that I want to have more detail. And I don't care if these things bleed into each other. I actually prefer that with this kind of a painting, because your eye, if you're looking into the sun, anytime you're looking into the sun, all the colors, for instance, are diminished in their hue and intensity. They become much more somber, and also you can't see all the details that you would see if you were. Now, if you're out there in person and you can squint down, you can see more. But and photographs capture a lot, but they lie a lot too. They don't really give you the truth. So by throwing some darker hues in here. Now this area of this boat on the side is, it's in shadow, so I could put any kind of color in here I wanted, and it's got to be, cool because it's in shadow. One of the things about boats and things like this is there are certainly lots of areas for textures, and so right in here I'm going to put some, this is quinacridone rust, which is basically it's a burnt sienna on steroids, and there's rust on the side of a boat, so I'm just going to drop some rusty things into here. Might be some stuff like that up in here. Just throw in some little spots of color here and there. And, you know, even in watercolor, you can always just drop in water. This is just put some water in there and let that do something. You know, you don't know what's going to happen, but sometimes you get some nice effects by just using water, and it'll push away the pigments and give you some interesting effects. So now I've got to make a little more, I love this gray that I had over here. Let's see if I can find a little, it looks a little violet, so maybe I'll put a little alizarin in there, but I love that. And see if I can't make this, use some of those same colors. I don't want to be too different from that side. Now on this photo, there's a it's all dark over here on this side, but I'm going to cheat it a little bit, I'd say, and you know, I like the silhouette. I like the shapes of the bow of the boat. Eric, when you're up at the lake, do you sail up there?
Well, I'm not much of a sailor. We have a little sunfish.
Oh,
Out once in a while, but no, that's usually the kids or my wife. They're the big sailors.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a little metal boat, just a little rowboat with a motor, and I'll go out painting in that. So if I have time, I'm going to go painting instead of sailing.
Well, sailing is one of those things. Yeah, it just sort of is sort of like painting in a way. It's relaxing. It's kind of calming. I used to like to sail. I don't now at all. I mean, I still like to, but I just don't. We live in Texas, you know. I suppose there are lakes around, but they're all dammed up reservoirs. You know that, right there.
I think I read there's only one natural lake in Texas. Everything else is dammed up reservoirs.
Yeah, it's Caddo Lake over on the border of, I guess, Louisiana. So I'm going to put some more masts up over there and things. So I'm going to make some more lines down on this side that are on the photo, and some breaks here. And let's see. So it doesn't really matter so much the colors here. I mean, I'm just dipping into my stew and just creating this shape again. There is a distinct edge at the bottom of these boats. Over here there is one, and over here there is one, and I want to do that while it's wet, but I'm not going to do it. I don't think I'm going to do it over there. I think I'm going to save this extra detail for this boat in front, so it gives me that feeling that the boat is a little more detailed, a little closer to me. And it's wet now. This is still wet, so it's going to just bleed and look a lot like what you see in the photo. So one of the things about watercolor, again, is I think the fun part is trying to capture certain things in a quick amount of time as you can. And one of the things that I like to call it a shorthand. You have an opportunity to, with very minimal brush strokes, create a shorthand that is, represents something and gives you a view that you're looking for, and it's really just a symbol for what it is you're trying to do. Now, in this case, on this painting, there's clouds, which are just, drops of paint put into that wet background. And, if it's trees, it may be, you just put some wet into a background, and it creates this image of these trees. It's going to make this a little less dominant over here by a little graying it out a little. Now, my masts and things like that on these these are fishing boats, so I'm not really thinking mass. I'm going to use a different brush. It's the same brand and the same kind. It's just smaller. This is a Princeton Velvet Touch Long Round. That's one of my favorites now. They're longer and they have a great point, and they help to you can still do areas because they hold a lot, but they're very nice and pointed. So here's there's a part of all these, and I don't want it too dark, so I'm going to put some, and I'm putting these marks in just quickly, a little bit randomly, but I am looking at what's there on this photo. Well, actually, in the photo, I had on this photo that you might see there, you see that over a little further to the left. There are some of these boat things, and those are that was photoshopped in. I had wanted to place some boat rigging behind there, so I was in Photoshop, and I just dropped in some things there, and so if you're ever in a waterfront area, there's all kinds of verticals. Some are ropes, and some are masts. Some are different kinds of rigging. There's boats like this have radar things on top. There's just all kinds of various things. If you go around, and there's nets if you're in a place where they're actually using the boat for netting. There's just lots of paraphernalia that can give you those verticals. It's always nice to have to break up the area on a painting with some vertical spacings like that. So here we are, pretty much everything I want to do in the middle value, and I call it middle, but it's pretty dark, as you can see. So let's I'll show you. We'll go into some other even darker darks, but I'm going to try to keep those over here on this portion. Now, I painted this before, and I put a figure in. I didn't have time to really get too carried away with the figure there, so I avoided it. Now, I still could do that. I could throw in a figure here pretty easily. It's just usually in watercolor like this, you're just trying to make an impression that there's some kind of a figure there. You're not trying to get overly detailed with it. So let's see what I can do. I'll make a little darker pool here. Still the same colors, my stew. Make it a little bit violet, pull up a little bit of this violet here. So in this area around this opening here where this what am I trying to say here? Where that opening in that container is. So this part here is dark back in here. And I want to make sure I let it make the gradation down to a lighter value too. So I take a little water in my brush and then just wet it, let it drift down into a lighter value. Over here, this part is this is a window here. Put that in because I think that will help define the shape a little bit, or define the boat cabin. There are some letters here that create I guess the letters of the boat. You have to have some, it's like the name, I guess, on I'm not very much of an expert on boats, quite frankly, but
yeah, well, there's usually license plate letters. I mean, not a plate, but numbers.
some kind of license.
Registration numbers, yeah.
You know, I was things I paint. You know, if I paint trees, I always, you know, I feel like I'm not an arborist, so I'm afraid I'm painting a tree that really isn't an actual tree. Or if I'm doing boat rigging, I'm not a, you know, some people paint rigging very accurately and are very good at that. And, I guess I'm just too much of a impressionist. I don't really try that hard. How are we doing for time, Eric?
We're doing, we got about 5 minutes, and let's see. Yeah, about 5 minutes. You're getting an incredibly sharp line out of that brush.
Yeah, this thing is incredible. This one's pretty new. They get worn down. They're a synthetic fiber, but it's just a really great
Which
brush.
one is that again?
This is the Princeton Velvet Touch Long Round. And because it's longer than your normal round, it's got the point just comes way out, and just that, you know, the larger one is what I use for almost all of this first part. You know, doing all that shape there. So these are going to be a little darker in here and coming off, and there's some dark stuff and some dark in here. I'm not going to do every part of this, but a little bit, just to kind of get your eye to move across here. Separate some shapes. There's a window of a boat right here. I'll do that. Of the cabin on this one back there. There's always in this line, this little thing is kind of nice and pointed. So you always have ropes, you know, coming off of things. You have you know, ropes and you can use this for fine lines or might be a rope dangling off this boat here back into the water. That got a little thick there, but so this turquoise I put in here, a little bit bright in some ways, and I probably should have had it reflecting into the water down here a little bit. Anyway, just drop some in just for the sake of some kind of accuracy. Also, let's put a little, like it's on this boat here. Now, this, you know, and I don't think I need to do much more with the foreground water. Now, you know, I could go in here, wet this down, and put some more of these bands of ripple that I did, you know, I did before, and you see those have now got pretty light, but it works. I think
it reads as water. Yeah,
I think it reads as water. It reads right. I don't think I need to do any more. I kind of think I need to. I'd like to darken that background a little bit over here. My eye's going over there, and I really want your eye to go up in here and then over that way. So I'm going to just tone this back here. I'm going to put some objects or something back in here. Just, you know, gradation. Get that a little bit less dominant. Your eye goes to those, you know, the lightest light and darkest dark, you know, wherever your eye is going to go to those places. It's like a spotlight on a stage that's dimly lit, and you have this spotlight, and that's where your eye is going to go. That's where the theater people want your eye to go. And in the case of a painter, you want to have the person's eye go to where you want it to go, not off the page typically. So yeah, tone that back a little bit.
We got just about a minute and a half left. Time flies when you're having fun, Michael.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And I'm not panicking. I think I've got it. You know, there's some things I would do to this to finish up. Now, one of the things my 7 steps, well, this is not one of my 7 steps, but usually I end up with a sloppy spot somewhere where I put, I got paint. So that becomes a bird. I always have to have a bird or two. And we'll have to put those in. A lot of birds by the water. But my 7 step on those videos is the easiest one, really, and that's to sign it. You're the one who created it. You're the one who did it. You own it. It's yours. Take pride in it and sign it. That's the end of the deal. And you may not be done with it. You may have to come back and add some details or something. But in this case here, I'm just going to put my name on it. And I'm a signature member of the National Watercolor Society, so I can put that on. American Impressionist Society, I'll put that one on. And several others, but if I don't want to get too carried away. Let me take the tape off when you can really see it. Much easier to see with the tape off. Get more like a mat, but it's I don't have a mat cut just right for this, so I'll do it this way. And yeah, one more. And we're getting down to final seconds, I bet, huh?
We are, but it's beautiful. Hey, thumbs up and applause for Michael Holter.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful piece. And of course, you can find Michael at michaelholter.com. I should remind everybody that Michael has 2 fabulous videos out. One is called The 7 Steps to Watercolor Portraits. The other is called The 7 Steps to Watercolor Landscapes. And both are available probably on your website, but also at lilyartvideo.com. Just search Michael Holter or creativecatalyst.com. So either one of those. Michael, this is, oh, wow, you're all fancy now. You got.
Oh, yeah. This is, I'm all over the place.
I'm impressed. I'll have to find out how you do that.
I can show you.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much.